Susan looked up at the night sky, watching the stars twinkle above her small farm. She often came out here after a long day of work to think and dream. Sometimes she wondered if there was someone out there, looking back at her. Tonight felt different. Somehow the stars seemed brighter, and the air had a strange electric feel to it. As she turned to head back to her house, a bright light flashed across the sky. It was too controlled to be a shooting star, too fast to be a plane. The light stopped and hovered directly overhead. Susan froze, unsure if she should run or stay. The light grew larger as it descended towards her field. She should have been scared, but curiosity kept her rooted in place. The light became a shape, a sleek craft unlike anything humans had built. It touched down gently in her cornfield, not damaging a single stalk. Susan held her breath as a door opened in the side of the craft. A ramp extended down to the ground. She expected little green men or something from a movie. Instead, what emerged took her breath away. A tall woman, at least 7 feet in height, walked gracefully down the ramp. Her skin was pale lavender, her hair flowing like liquid silver down to her waist. She had 4 arms, all moving with perfect coordination. Her eyes were the most striking feature, large, cat-like, and glowing with an inner golden light. She wore what looked like armor, but it moved like fabric, shimmering with every step. Behind the first alien came 2 others similar in appearance, but slightly shorter. They carried strange devices and looked around carefully. Susan realized they were guards protecting the first alien. The tall alien approached Susan, stopping about 10 feet away. She raised her upper right hand in what seemed like a greeting. Susan hesitantly raised her own hand, mirroring the gesture. The alien smiled, a surprisingly human expression. "I am High Commander Lyra of the Celestial Alliance. We have been observing your planet for some time." Her voice was melodic, with an accent Susan couldn't place, but the words were clear. English. Susan swallowed hard before finding her voice. Susan Mason. This is my farm." She gestured weakly at the fields around them. "Why are you here?" Lyra tilted her head, studying Susan. "We have come seeking allies. Our civilization faces a threat that could destroy us all. We believe humans may be able to help us in ways we cannot help ourselves. Of all the people on Earth, why come to me?" Susan asked, still struggling to believe this was real. The commander gestured to one of her guards, who handed her a small device. It projected a hologram between them, showing what looked like a genetic sequence. "Your species has something unique, something we lack, a particular genetic trait that makes you adaptable, resilient in ways we are not. You specifically have this trait in abundance." Susan stared at the hologram, then back at the alien. "Are you saying you need my DNA, Lyra?" Shook her head. "We need more than that. We need your help, your perspective. We need an ambassador, someone who can help us understand human ways of thinking. And in return, we offer knowledge, technology beyond what your people currently possess." The other guard stepped forward, holding a small crystal that glowed with inner light. "This contains information about our civilization, our technology, medical advances that could benefit your people. It is a gift, a show of our good faith." Susan looked at the crystal, then back at her farmhouse. Her simple life suddenly seemed very small compared to what stood before her. These beings had crossed the stars to find her. They needed help and were offering to share advanced knowledge in return. What exactly would I have to do? Susan asked. Lyra gestured to the ship. "Come with us. Learn about our ways as we learn about yours. Help us understand how humans think, solve problems, adapt. Your species has survived countless challenges through ingenuity and determination, qualities our people have lost over millennia of technological reliance." Susan thought about her life on the farm. It was a good life, but lonely since her husband died 3 years ago. She had no children. The farm was struggling financially. She had little to lose, and possibly a universe to gain. "Before I decide, can you tell me more about this threat?" "You mentioned." Lyra's expression grew serious. "We call them the Void. They consume everything in their path. Not a species as you would understand, but a force, a collective intelligence that absorbs technology and knowledge. They have already taken 3 systems in our Federation. We fight, but our thinking is too predictable, too logical. We believe human unpredictability may be the key to defeating them. Susan took a deep breath, making her decision. I need to pack some things and leave a note for my neighbor to feed my cat Lyra. Smiled again. Thank you. We will help you prepare for the journey. Your courage honors your species. Susan walked back to her house. She looked over her shoulder at the alien ship gleaming in the moonlight. She had no idea what adventures awaited her among the stars, but she knew her life would never be the same. Again, she looked up at the stars, but now they seemed like destinations rather than distant lights. The universe was calling, and Susan was about to answer. 6 months passed on Lumina, though Susan had learned that time was measured differently here. A local year was nearly twice as long as Earth's. The twin suns created strange light patterns that took getting used to, with periods of blue light and gold light depending on which sun was more dominant in the sky. Susan had grown more comfortable in her role as ambassador. She now had a staff of Alliance members who helped her understand their cultures and in turn learned about humanity. She had requested and received regular updates about Earth. The Alliance had kept their promise not to interfere with human development, but they monitored the planet, ensuring no other species would attempt contact. One morning, as Susan was reviewing reports on the Void's movements, Lyra entered her chamber with another alien Susan had never seen before. This new being was unlike any Alliance species she had encountered, small and delicate with translucent skin that seemed to shift colors with each movement. Its eyes were completely black without pupils or white. Susan. This is Kira. Lyra introduced the being. She is not of the Alliance. She comes from a system recently attacked by the Void. She has requested to meet you specifically. Susan extended her hand, then remembered this was not a universal greeting and lowered it. Instead, she bowed slightly, which seemed to please the visitor. Kira spoke, her voice like whispered wind. I have traveled far to meet the human who thinks differently. My people, the Illyrian, were nearly destroyed by the Void. Only a few thousand of us escaped. We have been watching your strategies with great interest. Susan gestured for Kira to sit. The 3 of them settled into chairs that formed from the floor, a technology Susan still found remarkable. I'm sorry about your people. Do you have information that might help us? Kira's skin rippled, turning a deep blue color. The Void is not what you think it is. It is not a natural phenomenon, nor is it truly a collective intelligence as the Alliance believes. Lyra leaned forward, her golden eyes intense. What do you mean? Kira looked between them. It was created. A weapon designed to target advanced civilizations. My ancestors discovered this truth in our oldest archives. Before they were consumed, the Void was created as a safeguard by a species long extinct. They feared technological advancement would lead to destruction, so they created a force that would prevent any civilization from advancing too far. Susan felt a chill run through her. A built-in reset button for the galaxy. Exactly. Kira's skin shifted to a pale green. The creators believed that truly worthy civilizations would find a way to overcome it, proving their right to advance. But in 50,000 cycles none have succeeded. Lyra stood pacing the room with all 4 arms clasped behind her back. This changes everything. If it's artificial, there must be a control mechanism. A way to deactivate it. Kira's color darkened. That is why I sought the human. We believe the solution requires thinking unlike our own. My people were scientists, philosophers. We approached problems like the Alliance does, with logic and reason. But we failed. The human approach may be the key. Susan thought carefully. If I designed a failsafe, I would build in a key. Something that would prove a species worthy. Something unexpected. She looked at Lyra. What is the most primitive, the most basic technology the Alliance still uses? Something so simple you don't even think about it. Lyra considered the question. We have basic elements in our power systems. Simple energy transfer principles that haven't changed in millennia. They're so fundamental, we don't consider them technology. That might be it. Susan said, Excitement. Growing. If the void targets advanced knowledge, it might overlook the simple, the basic. What if we could communicate with it or disrupt it? Using principles so fundamental they're considered universal constants over the next weeks, Susan worked with Kira and Alliance scientists developing a theory. The void consumed information and energy in the same way, recognizing patterns and absorbing them. But what if they introduced noise, chaos, randomness, information and energy patterns so unpredictable they couldn't be easily consumed? They designed a device, a transmitter that would broadcast random fluctuations across multiple frequencies. The science was beyond Susan's understanding, but the concept was hers. Essentially, they would give the void indigestion. The Alliance Council was skeptical but desperate enough to try. The device was built and installed on unmanned ships that would be sent into void territory. The mission was risky with no guarantee of success, but hope was something humans specialized in, and Susan had managed to inspire that quality in her alien colleagues on the day of the mission. Susan stood in the command center watching as the ships disappeared into the darkness of space screens, monitored their progress as they approached the edge of the expanding void. For hours nothing happened. Then one by one the ships began to fail, their signals going dark. Susan felt her heart sink. Another failure. Another plan that couldn't stop the inevitable. But then something unexpected happened. At the very edge of the void, where it had been expanding continuously for centuries, the darkness paused. The swirling patterns stilled. For the first time in recorded history, the void stopped advancing. Excitement rippled through the command center. Analysts scrambled to understand what was happening. Lyra moved to Susan's side, her normally composed face showing clear emotion. "It's working," she said, her voice tight. "It's actually working." Susan watched the screens cautiously. "It could be temporary. We need to wait, see if it holds." Days passed, then weeks. The void remained stalled, not retreating but no longer advancing. Either the transmitters had confused it or forced it to process the random information they were broadcasting. Whatever, the reason they had achieved what no civilization had managed in 50,000 years. They had halted the unstoppable. Susan became a hero throughout the Alliance worlds. Her name was spoken with reverence. Her methods studied and adapted. Her human perspective valued above all. The simple farm woman from Earth had accomplished what the most advanced minds in the galaxy could not. Yet despite the celebration, Susan felt restless. She missed Earth, missed the simplicity of her former life. One evening, as she stood on her balcony looking at the unfamiliar stars, Lyra joined her. "You seem troubled," the commander observed. Susan sighed. "We've bought time, but we haven't solved the problem. The void is still there, still a threat. And I worry about Earth. If the void ever reached my home," Lyra placed one of her hands gently on Susan's shoulder. "We are developing new strategies based on your insights. The Alliance is stronger because of you." But she hesitated. "I sense you wish to return home." Susan turned to her friend. "Yes, I do. At least for a visit. I've been away nearly a year. Earth time, I need to feel soil between my fingers, see my cat." She smiled at this last part. Lyra nodded. "I will arrange it, but the Council will insist you return. They value you too highly to lose you permanently." Susan looked back at the alien sky, the stars so different from those above her farm. Yet the universe was the same, full of wonder and danger. She had found her purpose here among the stars, teaching these advanced beings about human resilience, creativity, and hope. "I'll come back," she promised. "But first I need to remember why I'm fighting, why Earth and humanity are worth protecting." Lyra seemed to understand. "In 2 days, we will prepare a ship for your journey home. The Alliance will continue to monitor the void in your absence." Susan nodded, grateful. Yet part of her wondered if she would ever truly feel at home again, either on Earth or here among the stars. She had become a bridge between worlds, belonging fully to neither but essential to both. The journey to the Celestial Alliance homeworld took 3 Earth weeks. But for Susan, it felt like stepping through a doorway into another universe. The ship was a marvel of technology, with rooms that changed shape according to needs and windows that could show any view from across the galaxy. Susan spent her days learning about the Alliance, a federation of 7 species spread across hundreds of star systems. Commander Lyra personally oversaw her education using devices that transferred language and basic cultural knowledge directly into Susan's mind. It was painless but strange to suddenly know words and customs she had never learned. The Alliance homeworld was called Lumina, a planet orbiting twin suns. The ship descended through pink clouds to reveal a city that seemed to be made of crystal, and light towers spiraled up impossibly high, while flying vehicles moved in orderly patterns between them as the ship landed. Susan noticed a gathering of aliens waiting on a circular platform. Many looked like Lyra, but there were others too. Beings of different shapes and colors, all watching her with curious eyes. Lyra placed one of her hands gently on Susan's shoulder. "They are eager to meet you. You are the first human many of them have ever seen." Susan straightened her clothes, suddenly conscious of how primitive she must appear compared to these advanced beings. They had given her new clothing made of a light material that adjusted to temperature, but she had insisted on keeping some of her own clothes too, a reminder of Earth and who she was, as they walked down the ramp. Susan held her head high, remembering Lyra's advice: confidence is universal. Show them human strength. A group of tall aliens similar to Lyra but wearing elaborate headdresses approached. They spoke in musical tones to Lyra, who responded with formal gestures. Susan recognized from her knowledge transfer sessions. Lyra turned to Susan. "The High Council welcomes you to Lumina. They have prepared living quarters for you in the central spire." She gestured to the tallest tower at the center of the city. "From there, you will begin your work as ambassador." The next days were a whirlwind of meetings and presentations. Susan met representatives from all 7 Alliance species. Each had their own concerns about humans and their own reasons for wanting an alliance. The Vreen insect-like beings valued humans' emotional range. The Thalari, floating orbs of light, were fascinated by human creativity. The Makari reptilian engineers admired human adaptability. At night, Susan would stand on the balcony of her quarters, looking out at the alien city with its never-ending lights. Sometimes she would cry, missing the simple sounds of her farm, the chirping crickets, the rustling corn. The Alliance world was beautiful but sterile, lacking the messy vitality of Earth on. The 10th day, Lyra came to her quarters with troubling news. "The Void has taken another system. They are moving faster than we predicted." Susan had been studying the information about the Void, a strange dark energy that consumed technology and knowledge, leaving empty husks of planets behind. It seemed to learn and adapt with each civilization it encountered, becoming stronger, more difficult to contain. "Show me everything you have on them," Susan requested. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. She activated a wall panel which transformed into a display screen. Images appeared showing dark swirling clouds engulfing space stations and ships. The footage was disturbing: worlds going dark, cities crumbling as some invisible force pulled the knowledge and energy from them. Susan watched carefully, noting patterns. "How does it choose its targets?" Lyra seemed surprised by the question. "It attacks the most advanced technology first. The greatest concentrations of knowledge." Susan pointed to the screen. "See this pattern? It's not random. It's like water flowing downhill, taking the path of least resistance to the richest targets." Lyra studied the screen, her golden eyes widening. "I never noticed that pattern. Our analysts focus on defensive capabilities, not attack methodology." Over the next days, Susan worked with Alliance scientists, showing them how to look at the problem differently. She introduced concepts that seemed obvious to her but revolutionary to them: unpredictability, chaos theory, psychological warfare. The Alliance forces were used to fighting with logic and overwhelming force, not misdirection and creative tactics. During a High Council meeting, Susan presented her findings. "The Void is intelligent, but it thinks like you do, logically, predictably. If you want to defeat it, you need to be unpredictable. Do the opposite of what seems rational." One council member, a tall blue-skinned alien named Thera, objected. What you suggest goes against millennia of military doctrine. Susan stood her ground. That doctrine was developed fighting conventional enemies. This is different. You need human thinking here. Think of it like a game of chess where your opponent can read your thoughts, unless you make moves that make no apparent sense. Gradually, some council members began to see the wisdom in her approach. They authorized a test of her tactics in a remote system already partially compromised by the Void. Instead of defending their most advanced outposts, they evacuated them, setting traps and decoys. Instead of direct confrontation, they used misdirection and feints. The results were promising. For the first time, the Void was contained, pushed back from strategic positions. It didn't defeat the enemy, but it gave them time, a resource previously running out, as news of the success spread. Susan found herself becoming something of a celebrity among the Alliance species. Aliens would stop her in the halls of the Central Spire to thank her or ask questions. Some even tried to imitate human customs, bowing or attempting handshakes. Susan took it all with grace, but inside she felt the weight of responsibility growing. The fate of not just humanity, but multiple civilizations might rest on her ability to teach these advanced beings how to think more like humans, more unpredictably, more creatively. She wondered if her small farm on Earth still stood, if her cat was being well fed, if anyone missed her, and she wondered if she would ever see home again, or if her destiny now lay among the stars with these strange, beautiful beings who needed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. The return to Earth was strange in ways Susan hadn't anticipated. The Alliance ship dropped her off at night in the same cornfield where they had first found her. The craft was designed to avoid human detection, using technology that bent light around it, making it nearly invisible. As the ship departed, Susan stood alone in her field, breathing in the familiar sense of Earth and growing things. The night was quiet except for crickets and a distant owl. It felt both deeply familiar and oddly foreign after her time among the stars. Her farmhouse stood just as she had left it, though somewhat dusty and neglected. She had arranged for her neighbor Maggie to check on things occasionally, but a farm needed daily attention. Her cat Oliver came, running when she called, rubbing against her legs, purring loudly. At least someone had missed her. That first night back she couldn't sleep. Her bed felt too soft, the silence too complete after the constant subtle hum of Alliance technology. The stars outside her window now seemed distant and cold rather than welcoming. She had changed in ways she was only beginning to understand. The next morning she walked her property, reconnecting with the land she had known all her life. The corn had been harvested by the neighboring farm as she had arranged before leaving. Weeds had taken over parts of her garden. The chicken coop stood empty, the birds long since rehomed. Susan spent days cleaning and organizing, thinking about what to do next. The Alliance had provided her with a communication device disguised as an ordinary watch. She could contact them if needed, but they had agreed to give her time alone to readjust to Earth life. After a week, she drove into town for supplies. People greeted her with mild surprise but accepted her story about an extended trip to help a sick relative. No one would have believed the truth anyway. She bought groceries and farming supplies, planning to restart her small vegetable garden. Life settled into a quiet rhythm, but Susan found herself constantly looking to the sky, especially at night. Sometimes she would sit on her porch with Oliver in her lap and tell him about the wonders she had seen, the floating cities of Lumina, the great crystal forests of the Thallery homeworld, the magnificent 7 moons of Vreen. One evening, as Susan sat watching the sunset, her Alliance communicator vibrated gently. She activated it, and a small hologram of Lyra appeared, hovering above her wrist. "Susan, I hope your return has been peaceful." The commander looked tired, her usually perfect posture slightly stooped. "We have a situation. The Void has adapted to our countermeasures. It has begun moving again, slowly but steadily. The Council requests your return as soon as possible." Susan felt a mixture of dread and strange excitement. The peace of her farm life had been healing, but also somehow hollow after all she had experienced. "I'll be ready tonight." "Where should I meet you?" "The ship will come to your location." As before, Lyra hesitated. There is something else. A delegation from Earth governments has been detected investigating unusual energy signatures. They are getting close to discovering Alliance monitoring stations. We may need to establish official first contact soon. The Council believes you should be part of this process. The implications were enormous. Humanity discovering they weren't alone in the universe would change everything. Susan knew the risks having studied countless Alliance records of first contact scenarios gone wrong. Some species responded with fear, aggression, or religious panic. Others attempted to steal technology, advancing too quickly for their social development. I understand. She told Lyra, I'll help however I can. That night, as Susan packed a small bag, she heard the sound of vehicles approaching. Her first thought was that the Alliance ship had arrived early, but the headlights coming up her driveway were clearly human vehicles, military from the look of them. Susan quickly hid her Alliance communicator and went to the door. 3 black SUVs had parked in her yard. Men in dark suits and military uniforms were approaching. A woman in a business suit led them. Ems Mason. The woman said, showing identification, I'm
Agent Linda Harris with the National Security Agency. We need to talk to you about some unusual readings we've detected in this area. Susan maintained her composure, inviting them in, though her heart was racing. They asked about strange lights, unusual.
Visitors, any odd occurrences? She played innocent, telling them she'd been away until recently caring for a sick cousin. They seemed skeptical. One agent constantly looking around her home as if searching for evidence. Another kept checking readings on a handheld device. The questions grew more specific about her background, her education, her finances. She realized they had been investigating her thoroughly as the questioning continued. Susan noticed a faint glow through her kitchen window. Alliance ship was arriving exactly when she didn't need it to. The agents noticed her distraction, one of them moving to the window before he could look outside. The lights in the house flickered and went out. A moment later, they came back on Agent Harris's phone beeped. She looked at it with concern. We need to go, she told the others abruptly. Something's happening at base. The agents left in a hurry, leaving Susan alone and shaking. She looked out the window to see the Alliance ship hovering silently above her field, its cloaking only partially effective. The ship had used some kind of electromagnetic pulse to disrupt the agent's communications, buying her time. Susan grabbed her bag and ran to the ship. The ramp extended as she approached, and she hurried aboard, finding Lyra in the command center. They know something's happening, she told the commander. They've been monitoring energy signatures. Lyra nodded gravely. We detected their surveillance systems and temporarily disabled them, but this confirms our concerns. Your species is on the verge of discovering interstellar communications. Whether through their own development or by detecting our presence, first contact may be inevitable. Soon, as the ship rose from Earth, Susan watched her farm shrink below her. A strange sadness filled her heart, knowing she might never return to that simple life. But a new purpose was taking shape in her mind. If humanity was about to join the galactic community, they would need a guide, someone who understood both worlds. The journey back to Lumina was faster this time, using some new technology the Alliance had developed. In the ship's meeting room, Lyra introduced Susan to several council members who had joined this mission. They explained the current situation with the Void and the new concerns about Earth. The Void has adapted to our random frequency transmissions, council member Thera explained. It seems to have developed filters to process the noise. We need a new approach. Susan considered this, thinking about how the Void learned and adapted. It's like an immune system. The more it's exposed to something, the better it gets at recognizing and neutralizing it. We need to keep changing our approach. Stay unpredictable. Another council member, Zora, a crystalline being whose thoughts were translated by a device, spoke next. Your Earth is also approaching a critical point. Your technology is advancing rapidly, especially in areas of quantum communications. You will soon be able to detect Alliance transmissions, which means other, less friendly species may also take notice. Susan understood the implications. Humanity wasn't ready for first contact, not yet. They needed time to mature as a species, to move beyond their divisions and conflicts. What if we could solve both problems at once, she suggested slowly, an idea forming. What if we could redirect the void away from Alliance space and toward uninhabited regions while also shielding Earth from detection? The council members exchanged looks. Lyra leaned forward. How would this work? Susan smiled, feeling that familiar spark of human creativity that had proven so valuable among these logical beings. We use the void itself as a shield. Susan's plan was bold, risky, and completely unexpected, exactly the kind of thinking that had made her valuable to the Alliance. She proposed creating a controlled corridor of void energy, carefully directing it to form a barrier between Earth's solar system and the regions of space most heavily traveled by advanced species. The void consumes energy and technology signatures, she explained to the council. If we can create a thin shell of it in just the right location, it would absorb any signals leaving Earth, making the planet effectively invisible to the rest of the galaxy, and it would shield Earth from detecting off-world communications, buying humanity time to develop at its own pace. Council member Thera looked skeptical. You propose using our greatest enemy as a tool? That is unprecedented. Exactly, Susan replied. That's why it might work. The void doesn't think in terms of being used, it simply consumes. If we can predict and direct that consumption, we turn its nature against itself. The debate lasted for days. Some council members feared giving the void any foothold near Earth. Others worried about the ethics of hiding the truth from humanity. But eventually, Susan's argument prevailed. Humanity needed time. The Alliance needed protection. The void needed containment. This plan could potentially address all three. The implementation was complex, requiring the coordination of hundreds of ships and the development of new technology. Susan worked alongside Alliance scientists, helping them think in less structured ways, showing them how to approach problems from multiple angles. The human perspective continued to prove invaluable. Months passed as the preparations continued. Susan received regular updates about Earth. The government agents had increased their monitoring of unusual phenomena. Scientists were detecting anomalies in space that they couldn't explain. Humanity was on the cusp of a discovery that would change everything. Finally, the day of implementation arrived. Susan stood in the main control center of an Alliance command ship positioned at the edge of Earth's solar system. Screens showed the positions of all vessels participating in the operation. The plan required precise timing and coordination. Lyra stood beside her, 4 arms operating different control panels. This is the moment of truth, she said, her golden eyes fixed on the displays. If we succeed, your world gains time to grow. If we fail, Susan nodded, understanding all too well the stakes. The ships would generate specific energy signatures designed to attract the void, drawing it into carefully plotted positions. Then special transmitters would create boundary conditions, essentially building walls the void couldn't easily cross. The result would be a controlled corridor of void energy, forming a shield around Earth's solar system. The operation began, Alliance ships activating their special transmitters in sequence. As predicted, the void responded, moving toward the energy, signatures like water flowing downhill. The displays showed its progress as darkness spreading across star charts following the path they had laid out. For hours, everything proceeded according to plan. The void flowed into position, forming the beginning of the protective shell. Then something unexpected happened. A section of the void suddenly accelerated, moving faster than predicted toward one of the Alliance vessels. Alert sirens blared throughout the command center. Lyra shouted orders as technicians scrambled to respond. The affected ship attempted evasive maneuvers, but the void enveloped it, cutting off communications. Susan watched in horror, knowing the crew was likely lost. She had known there would be risks, casualties even. But seeing it happen tore at her heart. This was the consequence of her plan. People dying to protect Earth. The operation continued despite the loss. The remaining ships adjusted their positions, compensating for the gap in their formation. Slowly, painfully, the protective shell took shape. The void stabilized, contained within the boundaries they had established. When it was done, when the final readings confirmed success, there was no celebration, only a solemn acknowledgement of what had been accomplished and what had been sacrificed. The shell would need maintenance periodic adjustments, but it would hold Earth was now hidden from the rest of the galaxy, and the void was partially contained, directed away from Alliance space in. The days that followed, Susan found herself wrestling with the consequences of her actions. She had helped save countless lives throughout the Alliance, but she had also cut Earth off from the wonders of the universe, condemning humanity to isolation. At least for now. Lyra found her, one evening standing alone in the observation deck looking out at the stars. "You are troubled," she said. Susan nodded. "We did what was necessary, but who am I to make that decision for all of humanity? Some would choose knowledge over safety contact, over isolation." Lyra placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You made the only choice that protects both humanity and the Alliance. In time, when your people are ready, the shell can be dismantled. First contact can happen in a controlled way when humanity has moved beyond its current divisions. And if that never happens, then at least they will have the chance to try," Lyra replied. The alternative was allowing the void to eventually find Earth, or letting less benevolent species make contact first. Neither option offered humanity a future. Susan knew Lyra was right. But the weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. Before she had been an advisor, now she had become a guardian, making decisions that would affect billions of lives across multiple worlds. "What happens now?" she asked. Lyra gestured to the stars visible through the observation window. "Now you continue your work as ambassador. The Alliance needs your human perspective more than ever." And she hesitated. "You have a choice to make, Susan. Understood, return to Earth and live in isolation, or remain with the Alliance and never see her home again." The choice seemed impossible. Yet as she looked out at the stars, she realized her perspective had changed. Earth would always be her home, but her purpose lay here among the stars. "I'll stay," she said finally. "At least until Earth is ready, until humanity can join the Alliance as equals. Then I want to be there to help them understand." Lyra nodded approval. "The Council will be pleased. They have already discussed creating a new position for you. Not just ambassador, but advisor to the High Council itself. Your insights have proven too valuable to ignore." Susan smiled, thinking about how far she had come from that night in her cornfield, when she first looked up and saw lights in the sky. She had been a simple farmer with a quiet life. Now she was shaping the future of multiple civilizations. "One day humans will stand where I am now," she said, looking out at the galaxy. "They'll be ready to join you as partners, equals." She turned to Lyra. "Who knows, they might even have solutions to problems the Alliance hasn't been able to solve." Lyra's golden eyes shimmered with something like hope. "The universe is full of wonders we have yet to discover. Perhaps the greatest of these is the potential of species working together, sharing their unique perspectives. We have technology and knowledge beyond human imagination, and we have creativity, adaptability, and hope beyond yours." Susan finished together. They stood looking out at the stars, each seeing something different. Lyra seeing the known systems, the mapped territories, the established order. Susan seeing the possibilities, the unexplored, the future waiting to be shaped. On Earth, her small farm would continue without her. Oliver would be cared for by neighbors who would never know what had happened to the quiet woman who used to watch the stars. She had left instructions, a will, distributing her few possessions. Perhaps someday humans would learn the truth about the first ambassador who had traveled among the stars. Until then, Susan would continue her work, helping the Alliance understand human thinking while learning more about the galaxy and its wonders. She would be the bridge between worlds, helping prepare both humanity and the Alliance for the day when they would finally meet. As the command ship moved away from Earth's solar system, Susan watched her home planet fade to a tiny blue dot against the blackness of space. So small, yet so important, not just to her but now to an entire galaxy of beings who had learned the value of human perspective. Someday, she thought, we'll meet again, and when we do, both our worlds will be better for it.